Hello, Be Awesome listeners. This is episode 3, and I am not under the peach tree with Steve the Rooster. I do have an awesome guest with me here today. Many of you that have been following me saw that I took 3 flights. I flew from Boston to Los Angeles to Seattle to someplace, and I posted a picture of myself at the North Pole Police Station this morning, and that's exactly where I am. I'm in North Pole, Alaska. It's a roughly 1,700 miles south of the geographic North Pole, about 125 miles south of the Arctic Circle. There's about 2,300 residents here. High school is home of the Patriots, and they have a pretty cool logo that looks similar to our New England Patriots. And I found my guest here today purely by accident. As you heard in the first episode, the reason why I started, the purpose that I had to start this was there's a lot of people that are unhappy in the world today, and I see a lot of it in my travel, and I wanted to try to help, if I could, anybody and kind of cast a wider net than my public speaking to share positive stories, give perspectives, and find others that have the purpose and passion and the commitment to do awesome things. And a couple of years ago, I was in Anchorage, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should go to the North Pole." And I said, "How far away is it?" And he told me it was about 6 hours. But he told me when I went, I had to stop and see Santa Claus. And I said, "Well, why would I go to the North Pole and not see Santa Claus?" Well, I didn't know that there was actually a resident in North Pole, Alaska named Santa Claus until recently. It jogged my memory. I'm up here to do a leadership summit for my day job, and I jogged my memory. I looked it up, and sure enough, city councilor, past president of Chamber of Commerce, involved with a bunch of different things up here is Santa Claus. And I reached out to him, sent an email, as I share with you, and I will continue to share with you. The answer is always no until you ask. I sent an email titled, "Dear Mr. Claus," as my grandmother and my mother always told me to start with Mr. or Mrs. until told otherwise, and there was nothing funnier for me to share with my family than the response back that said, "Please call me Santa." And I got a response back, and we talked for the last couple of weeks, and I learned a lot about not just Santa Claus, but a lot about the state of the country we're in today that I have to say that I wasn't aware of. So, first of all, to be committed to change your name to Santa Claus, to move to the North Pole, all this stuff that people may or may not know about. First, welcome to the Be Awesome podcast, Santa, and tell us your story.
Thanks, Josh. It's good to be here, particularly here at the North Pole, but with you in particular. I'm very pleased with what you're doing with Be Awesome, and I'm happy I'm in your 3rd podcast. 3 is a lucky number, as you know.
It absolutely is. So, Santa, take us back to before you were here. Where were you? Tell us a little bit about the story getting us to sitting down here today.
Before living here in North Pole and being on city council, I used to live at Lake Tahoe on the North Shore, a beautiful area. And I had grown out my beard one time, and it's about my 3rd beard. And I was walking around town. It was a little bit after the summer, and the beard came out white this time. I'm now 71 years old, so I was in my late 60s then, mid-60s, and a lot of people were just calling me Santa. Just when I was walking down the road, I used to walk everywhere, and I still do. And I thought about it, and people said, "Oh, you ought to do the Santa thing this Christmas." That was in 2004. And I did. I volunteered for about 30 nonprofits around Lake Tahoe and the Reno area in Nevada, and had a great time doing it. So the February after that particular Christmas, it was kind of a cold day, very crisp. I was walking up in the mountains, pretty high altitude there. And since it was kind of a nice day, people still had their windows rolled down in their cars, even though it was kind of cold temperature. I could see my breath, and I was praying. I'm a monk. I'm also a bishop in this little church, but I was praying to God what I should do with this gift. I look at the beard as a gift and the whole kind of Santa appearance. And one part of the prayer was, should I change my name to Santa Claus to benefit a greater number of children? I'd been doing child advocacy before, but I figured, well, maybe this is a possibility to do more good for more children. So after my prayer, About 20 seconds later, this sort of white, nondescript car came up the road towards me, and I was sort of paying half attention because the windows were rolled down. And as the car passed, I couldn't really see who was in it, but this voice sounded like a young man in his 20s shouted out, and this is right after the prayer, "Santa, I love you," like that. And that's about as fast an answer to a prayer as I've ever had. So never saw the car again, never found out who it was that shouted out at me. But the following day, I called up the county clerk where I was living and went about changing my name legally to Santa Claus. No middle initial, no other thing, just SANTACLAUS. That's how that sort of happened, and it makes it easier now for me to get a hold of federal and state legislators when I want to support a particular piece of legislation that benefits child health, safety, and welfare. Make a long story short.
Yeah, and that's great. And if the gentleman in the nondescript white car is out there, I guess we could say thank you for shouting out when you did. Great points about kind of the advocacy. One of the things that you shared with me is that there were a number of Santa Clauses, a number of people that have changed their name to Santa Claus, but the original Santa Claus, or one of the Santa Clauses, tended to shake things up a bit.
Yeah, St. Nicholas, my name, Santa Claus, is based on the Dutch expression Sinterklaas, which means St. Nicholas. And my Santa Claus history goes back to the 4th century in the area now known as Turkey, over in Asia Minor. Bishop Nicholas and this little church was from a very wealthy family, and when his parents passed away, he had all this money, and one of the things he did when young women back then were going to get married, they had to have a dowry. Their parents had to give a dowry to the parents, basically, of the person their daughter was going to marry, to grossly oversimplify. Anyway, if they didn't have a dowry, a lot of them went into prostitution because that was the only other option at that time in that particular area, as it turned out. So Nicholas used to give these sort of dowries on behalf of these particular young women. That's how his sort of love for children came to fruition in a very positive way. He was saving them from a life that otherwise would have been pretty dismal. So Nicholas, the tradition was carried on by the Dutch, who were calling him Sinterklaas. And when they settled the area in New Amsterdam, which is now New York City, they took that tradition with them. The Feast of St. Nicholas is usually celebrated on the 5th or 6th of December. And they, having very limited resources in New Amsterdam, went ahead and combined the celebration of the Feast of St. Nicholas with celebration of Christmas. So that's how Sinterklaas, or Santa Claus, became associated with Christmas, being a gift giver, sort of like the Magi were being gift givers to baby Jesus. That sort of made sense to them way back when. So that's how the whole Santa Claus thing got started. It's a completely different tradition from Kris Kringle. Kris Kringle is based on a German tradition for Christkindl, which means Christ child. Nothing to do with Santa Claus whatsoever.
And you mentioned Turkey, and I think I read somewhere that you received an award.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about the award you received.
In 2009, the Santa Claus Peace Council in Turkey, which has been around for quite a while, recognized me for my belief that if we ever want to have international peace, we have to instill love and peace within the heart of each and every child. And they can do that in their family and also their community, their state, country, and throughout the world. If that doesn't happen first, international peace is not likely to occur anytime soon. So they recognized my efforts in that area and awarded me this International Peace Prize. One of the previous recipients happened to be the Dalai Lama, so I think I'm in pretty good company.
Well, you're in great company. That's fantastic. I had no idea I knew I had read somewhere on the article on the award. I didn't read too much into past recipients or too much of it. I just knew you received it, so I'm glad I asked that question. I have to somewhat plead ignorance to, I think my original reason for asking you to speak with me and do this podcast. A couple months ago, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew that we had a great name that I've been using for some time. We were tying it to a book and wanting to share awesome stories and awesome ideas, and in getting to know you over the last couple of weeks, I found myself looking and investigating into what you advocate, and the biggest thing is advocating for our children. And I have to say that what I found is just it's sad. There's no other word. There's no other word than sad. We've got almost 3 million children in the United States today that are homeless. To translate that's 1 in 30 kids. To translate it even further, the average classroom in the United States is 24 kids. So when we send our kids to school, when they sit in a classroom, there's an 80% chance that one of the kids that they're sitting with is potentially homeless.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
right.
That's just staggering to me. There's almost 500,000 kids in foster care right now with needs, and there are countless programs that are losing funding or have dwindling funds, that have a lack of support to really help these kids that really need to. They really deserve an opportunity. And I can't thank you enough for even giving me this time to talk about this, but also for me opening my eyes. I live in a fairly, what would be considered well-to-do community. I live in Easton, Massachusetts, home of the Pointed Shovel. The Ames family, Ames, Iowa, where the Golden Spike was laid, was named after one of our residents. So we have a long history, and higher median household income, and home values and everything else. And I spoke this morning with one of the members of what's known as Easton 4, which is for our residents of Easton. And I asked them, how many kids do you help at the holidays? And they told me 350. And that's almost 10% of our total student population. So it's really something that we all need to step up and do more, because one of the things was my fiance Amy, who went to Southern New Hampshire University, the commencement speech that they use for a commercial, the president says something that's pretty powerful. The world in which we live in is equally distributes talent, but does not equally distribute opportunity.
That's
and right. We need to do more, and it's amazing that you've chosen to do all of this.
Well, you've been doing some of it yourself.
Well,
the pumpkin paddle and all the rest of it. I think it's great.
Well, we still got work to do, but to stay positive and to keep doing the things you're doing is just awesome. Not to use the word too much, but it's on my shirt, so I might as well.
That's right. It'd be awesome. When I first started, there were more than 2 million children who were abused, neglected, exploited, abandoned, homeless, and institutionalized. And I used to address things like S-CHIP and foster care and adoption and that sort of thing when I went on a 50-state tour called Santa's Bless the Children tour in 2006 and 2007, visiting every state capital throughout the United States. Drove to 48 and then had to fly to Alaska and Hawaii, but talked with the staffs of all the governors and most of the U.S. senators who had offices in the capital cities about those particular subjects that I just mentioned. And one of the things I was trying to do is promote, sort of cross-pollinate, because a lot of these states were starting programs to help children, but they didn't know what had already been done in other states, so they were constantly reinventing the wheel, which is kind of a waste of resources in many ways. They didn't have programs like One File Per Child that would sort of medical and other file that would follow a particular child around through the systems that they had to go through for protection and aid and that sort of thing. And they'd see lots of different caseworkers, and there was really no consistency. And then if they moved to a different state, that old file just pretty much disappeared. So I was trying to prompt them, among other things, to try and help these children in a more effective and more efficient way, and make the limited funds that were available a little bit more available now, to make the programs that are in place more beneficial to a greater number of children. And it was pretty well received.
That's great. That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
It's a lot.
And I didn't have GPS, so.
It's funny, I'm going to digress a little bit here, but I was in the spring water delivery business in the late 90s and early 2000s, and my 11-year-old Danny is a huge, he understands, these kids understand technology way better than I ever will. And so everything's MapQuest or, do one of these map apps. And I tried to explain to him not too long ago about a map book. And he looked at me like I had two heads, and I couldn't even find the map book I had. And I used to have a stack of them in my truck because you couldn't go anywhere without one to find all these side roads and everything else. So it's a lot different world these kids are in that they get to do with these things. One of the things that's happened over the course of the last 3 weeks for me is in starting these podcasts, I've gotten an incredible amount of support from the Be Awesome Army, for lack of a better word, people that have said that, being real and doing this uncut, unedited, and just putting it out and putting myself out there and putting others out there has caused a lot of people to have interest in our shirts. They want a Steve the Rooster shirt. They want a Be Awesome shirt. And, over the last week or so, I've been working pretty aggressively to do something to make a difference and to support and help the causes that you've exposed me to. So we're going to be launching a store, a Be Awesome store. It's hidden right now. We have the shirts on there. We're going to start selling the shirts, and I'm committed to giving $3 of every shirt to a homeless or foster program that you and I are going to determine at that time, and we're going to do that to all perpetuity. So the first program we're going to do is we're going to do from now to Thanksgiving, and I want to come back up here in the first week in December and present you with a check for the charity that we're going to figure out who's going to get that. And I've quietly told a few people. I'm going to have to say that I will give Corey a shout out. He actually figured out how to buy a shirt online before the site was even available for me to see. So Corey, 100% of your first purchase is going to go to the charity. And I also need to thank my friends over at Alpha Facility Solutions, John and Katie Garcia, because they heard about what I was going to do today. They heard about the shirt idea that I had, and without even missing a beat, they have committed to buy a shirt for every single one of their employees. And we're gonna do some good stuff, and we're gonna help some of these causes, and we're gonna make a difference, and we're gonna give a lot of kids some hope, and hopefully we can provide them with the belief that they're going to have a better opportunity. And I'm ecstatic that I've had this opportunity to get to spend with you and talk to you here today and come to the North Pole. A lot of people do podcasts, they do it remote, and they plug in and they do all this stuff. As you know, Be Awesome listeners, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I have no idea what I'm doing, so I need to go wherever I'm speaking to someone to use the microphone that I have that I can just plug and play. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to get to go to some really great places. I tie it in with my work, and before we get going and I sign off here, Santa, one last thing I need to ask you is, how did you get on the city council for North Pole? Did you have a?
Well, I was a write-in candidate, and before that, I'd had some experience as a write-in candidate. I ran for president twice, 2008 and 2012 for president of the United States, and my slogan was restoring America's heart and soul, something I think is lacking and should be going on right now, and that's why I'm very enthusiastic about Be Awesome and what you're doing, because it puts a positive spin on some things that otherwise might be a little bit depressing.
Yes. Yeah, we got to try to look at that glass half full, as my mom always would tell me growing up when things weren't looking too good. And well, are you gonna run again for president? Or are we gonna see? No,
I sort of stopped after I managed to get about 300,000 Facebook followers, so that was a good start.
Yeah, that's amazing. You have 300, and I saw it last night, 309,000 Facebook followers. And if you. If people want to follow you, what should they search for exactly?
Santa Claus, TheSantaClaus. That's Santa Claus.
And you have some really great daily inspiration. You have a whole bunch of different quotes on there. One of the things that inspires me about you is a lot of people have beliefs and they're so firm in them that they're not willing to listen. They're a one way. They talk and they don't listen. And one of the things that I got from some of your quotes and things is that you share your beliefs. You're very strong in your beliefs, and that's fantastic, and people should be. But you don't try to push it so much on people, and you appreciate and respect others' beliefs and what they have. You don't you don't put them down or don't make them feel bad. And one of the things that I saw that was interesting, because you always have trolls. I mean, 308,000 followers. I got like 98 on Facebook right now. I'm hoping I break 100 with this podcast today. But 308,000 followers, and you don't really have any trolls. And one of the things that I saw that was interesting was you actually post in some of your comments, if you have something positive, please put it here. If you don't, please don't. And people tend to listen to that because I don't see any negative comments on there. So
very, very few. And when I see them, I just remove them immediately. So people have gotten used to that. And my site's more designed, my page is more designed for adults than for children.
Yep.
There are plenty of other sites that children can go to and just have fun doing the whole Santa stuff. I'm more of a different kind of a Santa, trying to bring it back to the old St. Nicholas days.
So I won't be giving you Amy's list for the pool for Christmas on that one. We're just going to go to the old Santa the other way.
The greatest gift you can give is love.
Absolutely, 100%. And she gives me a bunch, and I like to give her as much, if not as more, if I can. So.
May I share my Santa blessing with you and your listeners?
Absolutely.
May each of you have a lifetime that's filled with happiness, peace, good health, prosperity, and most of all, love, which is the greatest gift. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas in advance.
I don't think I could end any better than that. And thank you very much, Santa, for your time, for meeting with me this morning. This has been awesome. I have not slept since yesterday with the travel and everything and the excitement and driving around the beautiful town of the North Pole here. I've been to all the schools. I've been over to the reindeer farm. I think I'm going to go over there and pet them next. But Be Awesome listeners, thank you so much for making this third podcast possible, and it's because of your positive feedback, support, and love that keeps me going, and I'm going to keep doing this as long as you let me and as long as you like me. In the meantime, you can find me on my website, www.beausm.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to start the Twitter feed today with some posts. I'm going to work on my YouTube. On podcasts, I'm on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and you can find my podcasts on my website on the podcast tab. I have no idea how I've gotten all of this up and running, but it is moving and getting a ton of downloads. Our shop button is on the website. We're not going to be selling, or we're going to be selling the shirts effective probably close of business today or as soon as you want to hit the tabs and hit purchase now, but we will not be shipping shirts until August 1st. I appreciate your support, and like I said, Santa and I are going to do some work here, and we're going to share with you the charity that we're going to support. $3 of every purchase that's made between now and Thanksgiving, and I look forward to bringing a nice check here for him first week in December. I'm signing off. We'll see you next week. And Santa, any last words?
This is Santa here with Josh in North Pole, Alaska, telling you and encouraging you to be as awesome as you possibly can.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.